here. So what I would end up doing then is I think once you break this downsloping trend line, you now are potentially entering the bottom phase of the market. So what I would end up doing then is, yes, this is going to be resistance here, but I would actually be a buyer on a pullback off of that. Yeah, so yeah, you're right about the backlash. I mean, I think in the careers we take on when we kind of get in front of people, that's just the nature of it, especially with social media today. But weirdly enough, that actually reinforces my position. I joke with some of my fellow traders that if I tweet something out or if people start bashing what I'm saying, it usually means I should actually up my allocation because I'm going to be right and make more money. It's just the nature of the crowd, right? So when everyone is bullish, it's just the nature that's usually the topping out point or close to it. Now with Bitcoin, there were some signals, right? So when it was topping out in October, November at 65, 69,000, you had the same things going on that were occurring in 2017, namely that we had the futures ETF launch in October. In 2017, the futures actually launched. So it was the futures launch marked the high in 2017. The futures ETF marked the high in 2021. In addition, the euphoria was so palpable. I mean, like you could not go anywhere without the bagel guy, the pizza man, and I mean, I've always been taught that when those people are saying, "Hey, I'm buying Bitcoin," you're probably late to the party. The other things that were kind of crazy, and this didn't come till February, but I lived through the .com era, right? So that was the beginning of my trading career. The chart on Amazon from the .com was picture perfect, almost identical to what Bitcoin was forming. So I was like, all right, wait. So these altcoins are going up thousands of percentages, just like the .com bubble happened with the .coms back then. A lot of them make no sense. I mean, when you have Shiba Inu and Dogecoin, which are jokes, and they're valued at $50 billion, there's some disconnect going on here. And those are the signals that kind of harped as well. And then just some other stuff. So like some cool stats. At the height in November, the crypto market, I think, was 3.1 trillion. The height of the .com era was like 2.9 trillion, so very similar. And then in 2000, the Super Bowl was talked about as being the .com Super Bowl because there were so many .com commercials. And then this past Super Bowl in February was like the crypto Super Bowl because there were so many Super Bowl commercials. So I mean, that was just a lot of it right there where I was starting to recognize the over euphoric nature, and it just wasn't making sense anymore. It was like, how are there 10, 20,000 cryptocurrencies? How are they all worth something? There has to be a flush out here. Now you couple that with a double top on the daily chart, even though it pierced, it never confirmed above that. Stuff like that just got me very, very kind of bearish. I mean, both we've taken lots of slack and hits, but it's the logic, and I think you would agree with this, is being able to step back and just look at something objectively. And that's when you look at charts objectively and you look at situations like what was going on in crypto, it enabled you to see that something wasn't right here. And it didn't make sense that all these altcoins, I think there's like 20, or there was 20, I don't know how many are left. How are they all going to be going up forever and ever? You had to see that kind of Darwinian washout. But basically, the thought process behind the 12,000 target, there's a couple things. One's something I call a measured move. And basically what you end up doing here is you take the initial move down, then you had this consolidation pattern, right? And then you take that distance from here to here, and then you basically do an extension of that same thing, and you basically arrive right around 12,000 right here, right? I thought it was interesting that that also coincides kind of with this little pivot area right here, which is also going to be a major support. We can see right here, it was also a major support. And then the other thing that kind of stuck in the back of my mind is that every bear winter, as people call it in crypto, you get basically a Bitcoin that declines 80 to 85%. Well, if you take 80 to 85% from 69,000, you basically get right around 12,000. So it's not to say that targets can't adjust. They always can. I mean, I think you'd agree that with every candle on a candlestick chart, things may change a little bit. But to me, that 12,000 sticks out, especially that we're so close to 20 now, and the stock market is, to me, is not even close. I mean, we haven't even gone back to the high pre-COVID yet of where we were in the NASDAQ or the S&P. So to me, it's got to go below 20 at this point. Now, it may be 3 months from now, who knows, but it's got to go lower. And so I'm kind of in that range of saying, okay, well, now at least 12,000. Could it go to 5? It could. So think about this. There's so many average investors that are like, okay, well, the 2017 high, that's worst case my bottom, you know, and I'm going to put my stop right there, right? So we know stops get run, like we talked about earlier. The idea is that, you know, if everyone psychologically puts their level there, and then I've seen so many people say, all right, now, you know, and this is over the last month, 20,000 is where we're headed, so I'm going to buy there. And by the way, when we were at like 60,000, even 50 and 40, and I was saying 20, people were like, I'm going to sell my kidney to buy Bitcoin at 20. That would be amazing, right? But now, now what ends up happening is when you get to these levels, and I said it back then, people, the way you know a bottom is in or getting close is when people are too scared to buy in. Yeah. So 100% agree. There's a lot of people waiting to buy at 20, so they're going to flush it through 20. They'll push it down just enough to make those people stop out and exit, and then that'll be the bottom. And like you said, like, you're so right that I don't know if it's going to go to 12. Maybe it goes to 15, maybe 18, maybe 19, maybe 10. Don't try to, even as a technical trader, I don't try to pick exact bottoms. What I do is like basically when we pierce 20, I'm going to put out like 1/5 of the amount I want to buy of Bitcoin, and then probably every 2,000 or 2,500 or 3,000, I'll put out another order below. So I think for me, it's going to be when we start breaking above key levels. So like for instance, if we get a bounce here, right, which very possibly we could off 20 before it breaks even, or maybe it quickly breaks and then bounces. A lot of people, once it bounces significantly, will say, okay, we now have a low, this is the new bull market. You'll hear all the rigmarole, right? But really, in essence, you have this defined level here at 30, which is obviously, that is now major resistance, because we obviously hit it over here, and then look at the consolidation you got there before the breakdown. So if we go back there, that might just be a classic bear market retrace. The other thing that I'm noticing is this downsloping trend line connecting the all-time high with the secondary high here. This trend line within a month or two is going to start to be right in this range. And so we would, if I were to start to go bullish and really believe the bear market is over, I would have to see price starting to trade above this area. And then I would start to say, okay, maybe we're in a new bull cycle at that point. But right now, I mean, again, it has to prove itself before I'm willing to change that, especially with inflation causing the Fed to overreact and all this stuff like this. You got to believe that there's more downside, especially because I'm a true believer that the equity markets are very intertwined in crypto. So let's say we're 2, 3, 4 months out from now, and let's say I'm going to draw this and just kind of do my best here, but let's say you break here. So what I would end up doing then is, I think once you break this downsloping trend line, you now are potentially entering the bottom phase of the market. So what I would end up doing then is, yes, this is going to be resistance here, but I would actually be a buyer on a pullback off of that, as long as you stay above this trend line. And granted, you could come back down, but I think this downsloping trend line is marking your longer term trend from the highs. That's the big one. That's the one you really got to break first, but then understand that you'll get pullbacks off these levels along the way.